Hello everyone, the December Review here, back again with a movie review. Today, we have the 9th film in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series titled Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Spoilers are ahead, so make sure you check out the film only on Netflix. Fede Alvarez of the Evil Dead reboot has jumped back onto another horror franchise, not directing this time. That credit goes to David Blue Garcia, but as producer and co-story creator to this latest Leatherface offering. Pulling a little bit of inspiration from the recent Halloween success, this entry kind of is a direct sequel to the original, taking place in present day, but bringing back the original sole survivor, Sally Hardesty, to do battle all these years later. My expectations for the film were pretty high at first. While I'm not a big fan of the Evil Dead reboot, feeling it didn't capture the true spirit or look of the original series, it was a fun popcorn horror flick with loads of great effects work. So with the much maligned Chainsaw series, one that has seen its fair share of lukewarm entries, I figured it would be a good place for this creative team to kickstart the series back up again. The film made some headlines after its test screenings. Word on the street was the film is a mess and not worth even checking out. Once the trailer hit, my expectations sank further down than Jason Voorhees tied to the bottom of Crystal Lake. Just take a look at the movie's description on Netflix. They got the clicks, the likes, the live streams, but these influencers are no match against the tattered face of madness and a Rev chainsaw. Like seriously? I understand wanting to update films for current times, but that's the film's description? You might as well say, hey, are you a fan of one of the most intense and influential horror films ever created? Well then, bad news for you, because here's a big old bag of junk. Followers of this channel will no doubt know that I usually enjoy the films or TV shows that I review. I'm a bit particular with what I choose to discuss, and it's generally something that I've been looking forward to, so I tend to give high scores and praise. I'd rather focus on the good qualities of entertainment versus tearing things apart just for the sake of being negative to get clicks. So with all that said, I was fully prepared to break that streak with the latest Chainsaw movie. I was already thinking of creative ways to dismantle this obvious personal attack on the legacy of Tobe Hooper's monumental original film. Then a funny thing happened. I watched the movie, and you know what? It's really not that bad at all. In fact, it's actually a very intense at times and well-crafted horror film. That's not to say it's without its flaws, because I could sure come up with a list of things that had me scratching my head. But overall, I thought it worked, with two leads who battle Leatherface in an excellent second half. Sarah Yarkin plays Melody and Elsie Fisher is Lila, two sisters who, along with a few friends, have arrived at Harlow, Texas to begin auctioning off buildings in town. Looking to create a new home for themselves, the crew have money in their eyes and seemingly the paperwork in order to begin a project. Once there, they realize a woman named Ginny is still living in the town's orphanage and is refusing to leave. Well, after a bit of a heated exchange, Ginny has a heart attack and is rushed to the hospital along with her rather leather-faced looking friend. Ginny passes away soon after, and this guy who looks like Leatherface, well, surprise, because he's Leatherface, and he begins to extract his revenge on every single person he comes near. Once the madness begins, Sally Hardesty gets word of the situation and drives to Harlow, who along with Mel and Lila attempt to take Leatherhead out for good. I found the film to be a very well-paced and sincere piece of work. It doesn't take very long for the carnage to begin, and the film is highlighted by some pretty suspenseful and prolonged moments. There's a nice emotional bond between the sisters, as one is a victim of a school shooting who isn't exactly thrilled with weapons, and rightfully so. Part of the idea of starting this new town is to leave behind her trauma and start over in a safer environment. By the time the end of the film rolls around, her actions flip the script on her past by placing her fears as a victim to one of a survivalist. It's a message I must admit I wasn't expecting in this film, and I thought that it worked very well. There's also sincerity with Ginny, as Mel truthfully thought they owned her property. She was upset over the situation and even apologizes to Leatherface at one point. You don't get that in many of these films. She also doesn't act like your typical person in this situation. Once the chainsaw revs up, she doesn't really feel like sticking around and tries her hardest, for the most part, to get out of Dodge as quickly as she can. If you're a fan of crazy FX, then you are in luck because this film doesn't hold back. The bus scene alone was as crazy as I've seen in some time, with Leatherface acting like he's the head of the household on Thanksgiving, carving things up to unprecedented levels. The movie has a few extended sequences up its sleeve. First, involving a car crash where our madman is lurking while someone is trapped in the car. We've seen this before to great effect, say in Scream 2, and to a lesser effect, say in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Here, it does things right, finding a nice balance of tension for the audience. Later on, we find Mel trapped under a bed for a while, waiting for a moment to get the heck out of the orphanage. But that darn Leatherface just won't seem to leave. This leads to another rather intense moment where she finds herself trapped under the house with a chainsaw in hot pursuit. Unfortunately, I can't just give all glowing grades to this entry. The Sally Hardesty story arc was pretty much a wasted opportunity. She shows up later on in the film, well after our main leads are already established. She eventually runs into Mr. Sawyer, but there is really no emotional impact one way or the other. The Laurie Strode comparisons are obvious, but misses the mark in that with Halloween, Laurie is the main protagonist. It's her and Michael's show regardless of who else is there. For Sally, it's not her film, and her brief interactions don't hit the way they could have with a different script. She also does one of the dumbest things I've ever witnessed in a movie, ever. In my 44 years of movie going, from Busta Rhymes going all kung fu in Halloween 8, to Tatum trying to get through a garage door in Scream, nothing has prepared me for one moment in this film. Once Sally arrives on the scene, she finds a wounded Leatherface in his house, sans any way to protect himself. She's standing just feet away from him, ready to take him out for good. Leatherface even seemed aligned with the fact that his time is done. Game over. 50 years of waiting is fulfilled. But she, of course, screws the whole thing up, instead insisting on striking up a conversation before using the hand cannon that she's holding. The phrase eye roll was invented for moments like this. Not to be outdone, later on, Mel finds herself behind the wheel of a car, sister in tow, and no good reason not to finally flee the town. But instead, she tries to run Leatherface over, so you know how well that goes. For Leatherface himself, outside of the mask looking nothing like we've seen before in the series, Mark Burnham's portrayal here is pretty good. He comes off more like Jason Voorhees than ever before, shedding the family dynamic of the early chapters and taking center stage as the lone Sawyer left standing. The mask makes sense within the confines of the film, though I wish they had went with a more traditional look. Overall, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 lives up to the title. It takes place in Texas, there is a chainsaw, and there is very much a massacre. The film doesn't try to create much of the original's documentary-style vibe, save for having John Larroquette back for the intro and a few music cues here and there. Instead, it goes for a gritty and modernized take on the material, offering up a few Easter eggs along the way. While not perfect, it wasn't the train wreck the advance notice made it out to be, and it has one heck of an ending, which of course sets up a sequel, and was a great shock moment. Our two leads did a great job, especially during the second half, where the tension went up around every turn. I give Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 3 out of 5 stars, and count me in for the next one.
50 years I've been waiting for this night. Just to see him again. Who? Leatherface.
If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel for more, and let me know your thoughts on the film in the comments section below.